Hi there, everyone, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about gardening, botanical history, and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is September 28th. Today in botanical history, we celebrate an Irish physician and botanist, an English poet and critic, and an African-American poet. We'll hear an excerpt from Ellen Hilderbrand, one of my favorite authors, and we grow that garden library today with a book that tells the story of 3,500 acres of land and its return to the wild. And then we'll wrap things up with an Australian English writer, gardener, and traveler. It's a great story. But first, here's today's curated news. Today's curated news comes to us from Garden Center magazine. This caught my attention because the title of the post was "A Native Super Edible on the Rise." Care to guess what we're talking about here? Well, I'll save you the suspense. It's the black chokeberry. Who knew? So if you've been considering putting chokeberries on your property, primarily for their ornamental value, well, now you may have an entirely new reason to put them on your property. You know, for me, this post made me chuckle because I just removed 5 automagic chokeberries from the front of my house in Maple Grove. I didn't care for them in my front garden right in front of my house, but they'll do great here at the cabin. I'm using them as a screen in the backyard by the outdoor dining area. So they're perfect there. And hey, who knows? Maybe while we're enjoying some outdoor meal someday, we'll just lean over and grab some chokeberries. Wouldn't that be fun? Well, that is, of course, if the birds don't get them first. Now, I'm going to share this post in the Facebook group for the show, and I know many of you may not be interested in the edible aspect of chokeberries, but you might be interested in using them in your landscape. And so you'll want to check this post out because at the very, very bottom of the post, they list all of these different cultivars that you can consider if you're going to use chokeberry in your landscape. So let me walk through these here with you quickly so that you know your different options. The first one that they list is the Iroquois Black Beauty chokeberry. Now, this one was grown at the Morton Arboretum. It was collected in the wild. They found it growing in Illinois, and they cultivated it. What they like about it is that it has beautiful flowers, great fall color, and it's compact. So that's great. Ooh, and here's something else really quick. Apparently, you can take the berries and make a chokeberry syrup that you can put on top of ice cream or even add to carbonated water. Then you can have a chokeberry pop. So there you go. Now, another chokeberry that they bring up here is the Automagic. That's the one that I have. This is a mid-sized chokeberry, and it's known for having fruit that is larger and glossier than other cultivars. Something to think about there. And then this last one that they mention is the Viking black chokeberry. Now, this one is the leading commercial cultivar, both here at home in the United States and in Europe. This is not the compact version. After all, the name is Viking, so think of the big bad Viking here. But what's interesting about Viking is that the fruit is sweeter. So this would be a great plant in a big backyard, or if you have an area on your property where you need to fill in a little bit. You get a little bit of privacy, great fall color, and then, of course, the chokeberries. Okay, that's it for today's curated news. If you'd like to check out this post on chokeberries from Garden Center magazine, by the way, this piece was written by Jolene Hansen. She did a great job. All you need to do is head on over to the Facebook group for the show, the Daily Gardener Community. Type in the word chokeberry, and this post will pop right up. If you're not in the Facebook group for the show, please consider joining. We'd love to have you join our group. You'll be able to interact with other listeners of the show, share your garden stories, ask questions, and of course, look at some amazing pictures of gardens and flowers and so forth. So to join the group, just head on up to the search bar in Facebook where you'd look for a friend and then type in the words Daily Gardener Community and request to join. There'll be 3 little questions that pop up. All you have to do is answer those. I do read those, so if you need to send me a little note or let me know something, you can do it that way as well. And I will admit you into the group. It's just that simple. All right, it's time for today's botanical history. Here's botanical history for today, September 28th. Today is the birthday of Thomas Coulter. He was an Irish physician, botanist, and explorer, and he was born on this day in 1793. Thomas founded the herbarium at Trinity College in Dublin, and he spent a year and a half studying with the great Swiss botanist Augustin de Candolle before exploring in Mexico and the American Southwest in the early 1900s. Today, Thomas is remembered in the names of several plants. The Rhamnia coulteri, or the Coulter poppy, is a white-blossomed flower that's native to Southern California and Baja California. And it's also called the California tree poppy. Incidentally, the Coulter poppy has the largest flower of any poppy. And another Southern California specimen, the Coulter pine, is known for creating the largest pine cones in the world. And they're often called widowmakers by the locals because each pine cone can weigh up to 10 pounds. Yeah, I'll say. I'm out in the backyard sometimes with the kids and I'll have acorns falling on my head, and that hurts. Can you imagine having a 10-pound pine cone hit you on the head? Yeah, that would definitely be a widowmaker in my book. All right, and today is also the birthday, the heavenly birthday of Francis Turner Palgrave, who was born on this day in 1824. He was an English poet and critic, and he's remembered for compiling The Golden Treasury in 1861. It featured English songs and lyrics. And your great-grandparents might have had a copy, and you can have a copy as well, because the popular anthology is still published. And here's a nice little gesture. All of the latest editions still have Francis Palgrave's name on them. Isn't that sweet? Anyway, Francis wrote a wonderful little poem that I found. It was called Utopia. And in it, Francis wrote this: "There is a garden where lilies and roses are side by side, and all day between them, in silence, the silken butterflies glide. I may not enter the garden, though I know the road thereto, and morn by morn to the gateway I see the children go. They bring back light on their faces, but they cannot bring back to me what the lilies say to the roses, or the songs of the butterflies be." Isn't that sweet? And today is the birthday of James Edwin Campbell, the African-American dialectic poet. He was born on this day, September 28th, in 1867. In his poem, A Night in June, he wrote, "What so rare as a day in June? O poet, hast thou never known a night in rose voluptuous June?" And in James's poem, When the Fruit Trees Bloom, he wrote, "When the fruit trees bloom, pink of peach and white of plum, and the pear trees cones of snow in the old back orchard blow, planted 50 years ago, when the suns and winds of June shall have kissed the fruit to bloom, then Falstaffian bumblebees drain the blossoms to the lees when the fruit trees bloom." It's time for today's Unearthed Words. Today's Unearthed Words come to us from Ellen Hilderbrand. This is an excerpt from her best-selling book called The Love Season. The herb farm reminded Marguerite of the farms in France. It was like a farm in a child's picture book. There was a white wooden fence that penned in sheep and goats, a chicken coop where a dozen warm eggs cost $1, a red barn for the 2 bay horses, and a greenhouse. Half of the greenhouse did what greenhouses do, while the other half had been fashioned into very primitive retail space. The vegetables were sold from wooden crates, all of them grown organically before such a process even had a name. Corn, tomatoes, lettuces, 17 kinds of herbs, squash, zucchini, carrots with the bushy tops left on, spring onions, radishes, cucumbers, peppers, strawberries for 2 short weeks in June, pumpkins after the 15th of September. There was chèvre made on the premises from the milk of the goats. There was fresh butter. And when Marguerite showed up for the first time in the summer of 1975, there was a 10-year-old boy who had been given the undignified job of cutting zinnias, snapdragons, and bachelor buttons and gathering them into attractive-looking bunches. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Wilding by Isabella Tree. This book came out in 2019, and the subtitle is The Return of Nature to a British Farm. In this book, Isabella, whose last name Tree, I think, is perfect for a book on nature, guides us through the result of a massive rewilding project in West Sussex known as the Knepp Experiment because it took place on her family's Knepp estate. Isabel and her husband Charlie bought the estate in the 1980s from Charlie's grandparents. After recognizing that intensive farming on heavy clay was economically unsustainable, they decided to step back and let nature take over. And to mimic the large animals that once roamed Britain in the wild, they introduced free-roaming cattle, ponies, pigs, and deer, and then let nature dictate the outcome on 3,500 acres. And the animal activity turns out to be the linchpin to kickstarting the diversity in flora and fauna. Isabel and Charlie removed the infrastructure of traditional farming, like drains and fencing, and in a little over a decade, wildlife and plant diversity returned. Knepp became home to turtle doves, nightingales, peregrine falcons, and lesser spotted woodpeckers, just to name a few. The diversity in the species at Knepp is astounding. And the beauty of a functioning ecosystem is that it sustains and encourages life all by itself. Nature definitely knows what she's doing. This book is 384 pages of a personal memoir and a nature memoir. It's hopeful, inspirational, and above all, doable. You can get a copy of Wilding by Isabella Tree and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $9. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, September 28th in 1885, that Clara Coltman Rogers Vivian, the Australian English writer and gardener, was born. She used the pen names C.C. Rogers and C.C. Vivian. She worked in the slums of East London as a social worker and a nurse in World War I. That's where she met the 10th Vivian Baronet, who was 27 years her senior and lived on a 15th century estate known as Trello Warren. Well, the two married, and it turns out they were actually quite compatible. They shared 11 happy years together. They enjoyed nature and gardens and birding. And it was during her married life that Clara met one of her dearest friends, Daphne du Maurier, who used Clara's centuries-old home and gardens as the setting for her novels, Frenchman's Creek and Rebecca. Clara's friend A.L. Rouse recognized the use of the Trello-Warren landscape in Daphne's work, and he wrote, "The colonnade of trees in Rebecca, by the way, is the avenue of overarching ilaxes at Trello-Warren. It looks like a cathedral aisle." Now, when Daphne du Maurier visited Trello-Warren for the very first time, she fell in love with its rugged landscape and timeless quality. She described it as, quote, "the most beautiful place imaginable." After her visit, she wrote in her diary, "I simply hated leaving Trello-Warren. Few places have made such a profound impression on me." Well, Trello-Warren similarly inspired Clara, and when her husband died, she started market gardening and writing to help financially maintain her West Cornwall estate of Trello-Warren. She wrote over 20 books during her life of adventure and beauty. And get this, when she was 67, she traveled to the Klondike and embarked on a 400-mile walk with the aid of 2 guides. The result was her book, Down the Rhone on Foot. Well, most of Lady Clara's books were about her beloved Cornwall and, of course, her gardens. I just tracked down a copy of one of her books on gardening. It's called Letters from a Cornish Garden. It was published in 1972 and shares a collection of delightful essays written by Lady Clara about gardening. And no surprise, her friend Daphne du Maurier wrote the foreword. Clara once wrote, "As one grows older, one should grow more expert at finding beauty in unexpected places, in deserts, and even in towns, in ordinary human faces, and among wild weeds." Good advice. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove and Wyoming, Minnesota. If you want to read today's show notes, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. And don't forget that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can always get in touch by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.